background and then describe what the bill would do. And then what the really important thing of this, the really important part of this presentation will really be, following the slide presentation, your questions. So we're going to have hopefully a generous period for question and answer. But I am going to ask everyone to hold your questions till the end. And then what we'll do is we'll put, we'll ask you to put your questions right into the chat. And then we'll raise those questions up and Rob will answer them. And I'll jump in as well for the legislative end of things. So I'm going to share my screen. I want you to close your eyes for a second because there's too much on it. Here we go. All right, share my screen. Then I'm going to, sorry, let's see if I can get in here. I'm going to present the slides. Here we go, 1 second. Here we go. All right, so we're here today to talk about new legislation that was introduced in January called the Massachusetts Physician Pathway Act. You'll see the formal name below, which is telling. It says an act improving healthcare delivery for underserved residents of the Commonwealth. We all know that there's a terrific shortage of physicians right now, and there's also an awful lot of state residents who don't have access to care from physicians. Whoops, let's see if I can. I'm trying to think of how, let me see how this, oh, there we go. Okay. Sorry, I'm just getting used to the PowerPoint here. Yeah. So the Physician Pathway Act is designed to mobilize all of your expertise to address physician shortages in Massachusetts by creating a pathway to full licensure in exchange for at least 3 years of medical practice in an underserved community. The bill's framework was recommended by the Massachusetts Special Commission on Foreign Trained Medical Professionals in a report issued on July 1st, 2022. And both Rob and I were appointees of the MIRA Coalition to that commission. We worked with state legislators to introduce the bill in January 2023 at the beginning of our current 2-year legislative session. And the bill's sponsors are State Senator Jason Lewis and State Representatives Jack Lewis, no relation, and Mindy Dong. So under the pathway that the bill proposes, there are 3 steps for internationally trained physicians to obtain full licensure in Massachusetts. The idea is it's a 3-step process. So to begin, what it would do is allow eligible internationally trained physicians to be issued a renewable 1-year limited license to practice medicine under the mentorship of a participating healthcare center or hospital. And then once that has been completed successfully, the internationally trained physician would be eligible for a renewable 2-year restricted license to practice in a shortage area or specialty. Now, what does that mean? The restricted license is not the way we generally think of restricted licenses. What it means is restricted to a specific geographic area or population that doesn't have doesn't have sufficient access to healthcare, and also to a specialty, a specific shortage specialty. That's generally going to be primary care. It will also include psychiatric care and possibly others. Once they've practiced for 2 years under the restricted license, and this is independent practice, by the way. This does not mean that they would be supervised in neither case, neither under the limited license nor under the restricted license. Neither requires supervision. They would then be eligible to apply for a full unrestricted license to practice medicine anywhere in the state. And both the 1-year limited license and the 2-year restricted license are renewable 1 time. So we're talking about a process that can take anywhere from 3 to 6 years. So what is this mentorship program? The mentorship program is presented as an alternative to residency. So as I think all of you know, current Massachusetts licensing law is designed for recent medical school graduates, not experienced physicians. And as a result, experienced physicians like you all are required to repeat your postgraduate clinical training by securing a residency, which is nearly impossible to do because there are such limited slots. The Physician Pathway Act pathway would substitute a one-year mentorship program at a participating healthcare facility where what we're calling the ITP, the internationally trained physician, where the ITP would practice under the limited license. The participating facility would use that mentorship program to develop and evaluate the ITP's familiarity with the non-clinical skills and standards that are appropriate for medical practice in Massachusetts and in the United States. And just so you know, whoops, sorry about that, didn't mean to do that. The one-year limited license is, sorry, here we go. The participating healthcare facility can be any of these three. It can be a federally qualified healthcare center, a community health center, a hospital, or actually another health center approved by the Massachusetts Board of Registration in Medicine. So how would you be eligible to participate and take advantage of this pathway? You would start with limited licensure, with a one-year limited license, and those who are eligible are internationally trained physicians who have obtained their medical degree outside of the United States, have previously been licensed or authorized to practice outside the US, and have practiced independently for at least a year. They would need a valid ECFMG or other credential evaluation service certificate approved by the Massachusetts Board of Registration in Medicine, a passing score on the first two steps of the US medical licensing exam, and they would have to be accepted into the mentorship program I just described with a participating healthcare facility with the expectation of full-time employment under the limited license. So the idea here is that people would be paid for full-time work. Let's see. Whoops. Let's see. Here we go. Then the second step, once that program has been, the mentorship program has been completed successfully, the physician then becomes eligible for a 2-year restricted license. And that would authorize them to practice, again, independently in a Massachusetts shortage area and specialty designated by the Board of Registration in Medicine. Remember, again, here we're using, the idea is to mobilize the skills of physicians to address healthcare shortages. So that's the reason for that piece. The eligibility for the 2-year license requires having successfully completed the assessment and evaluation program, the mentorship program I just described. They will have to have obtained a passing score on step 3 of the medical licensing exam, and then fulfill any additional criteria that the board may require. But just so you know, that criteria cannot include requiring someone to complete a residency. And then once they've completed that process, they'd be eligible to apply for full unrestricted license to practice anywhere in the state. I'm having trouble advancing the slides for some reason. Give me 1 second. Okay, yeah, that's step 2. Sorry, just bear with me for a second because I'm having trouble with, okay. So I'm going to say something about and we open for questions for those of you who just joined. We're having questions at the end of this. And you will also, everyone who's registered will get a copy of this PowerPoint. So don't worry about trying to remember this information because you'll all have it. So in Massachusetts, we have a 2-year legislative session. This current session began in January of this year and was assigned to the Joint Committee on Public Health. The next step is that this committee will hold a public hearing for this bill, most likely in October or potentially later. The public is invited to attend this hearing virtually or in person to speak about why they think the bill should be passed, and we hope some of you will join us for that. And then after the hearing, the committee has until February 7th next year to decide whether to advance the bill this session. If they decide to recommend the bill for passage, which we hope they will, it will go to another committee, and then most likely Ways and Means. And then the Ways and Means Committee has until July 31st next year to send the bill to the full legislature to vote on passage. Sometimes these bills get voted on the last day of the legislative session. That is the last day. If the bill is enacted this session, the Board of Registration in Medicine will propose regulations to implement the bill, and this could take a while too. So I'm saying this just so that you know that the legislative process is long, longer than we'd like it to be. And there's no certainty that they will pass a bill. It's unusual to pass a bill in its very first session. However, there's considerable momentum for this issue. We're seeing a lot of states passing legislation like this over the last few years, some similar, some a lot more narrow. And so we know that there's again, legislators are aware and concerned about the current physician shortage. So we're hoping that maybe we can have an accelerated process here. And let's see, I'm just going, I can't advance the slides normally, so I'm doing it by hand, so bear with me. The last thing I want to say is that passage of any legislation in Massachusetts requires advocacy it requires support from the population, particularly the folks who are most impacted by the current situation. That means in this case, they need to hear from internationally trained physicians who understand the obstacles that you all are facing to practice. There's several ways you can make your voice heard. Here's just a few of them. One of them is when the public hearing is announced, we will get in touch with you and you would be invited to share your stories, and we could give you guidelines on how to do that, get you signed up for it, join you if you go in person, meet you ahead of time, guide you around the State House. Another thing, which is even more important than actually attending the hearing, is submitting written testimony to the committee. We've been told that this is one of the most effective actions that you can take. And the Mirror Coalition can provide a template and guidelines for you and other support, and we'll even submit your testimony for you. So we're happy to work with you to get that done for those who are interested. I know that the registration form had a place for you to indicate your interest in doing this, but you can let us know at any time. Another thing that some folks have done in the past is to join us for meetings with key legislative leaders, right? That's another sort of more involved way to get involved. So so there's contact information at the end. And again, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble with my screen here because it's not advancing. 1 second. So sorry, there is contact information here. Again, you will be sent this information, so don't worry about getting it down. But if you'd like to get involved in legislative advocacy, you can contact me. You could also contact Maddie at the African Bridge Network. You can also contact Maddie to learn more about physician licensure, the steps, what you need to do to prepare. And then the last thing is, if you'd like, we're planning on putting together a newsletter with updates on the bill's progress. If you'd like to be on that newsletter list, again, there was a place in the form for you to indicate that, but you can also contact Sophia, and there's her email address right there. So the last bit here is question and answer. We got through that pretty quickly, and I'm happy because this is the most, in my view, this is the most critical and useful part of an info session like this. So thank you for bearing with the slideshow, and we're happy to pull up any slide that you're interested in learning more about as well, or where you may have questions. So Rob, go ahead and take it away.
So I do see some questions coming up.
Here we go.
So Adoma asks, what's the difference between this program and the normal pathway for licensure? Because it seems that both pathways require a physician to pass USMLE steps 1 and 2. They do. So the key difference here is currently in Massachusetts, you're required to demonstrate completion of a US-based residency program. That's what we're getting people released from by doing this. This allows you to get a license in the state without having completed a US-based residency. We're acknowledging that if you're an experienced physician and you've already completed graduate medical education abroad, you don't need to do it again. So yes, all the other requirements are still there. We can't remove, nor do we want to, the requirements for step 1, step 2, and all these things, because we want anyone.
We just lost you, Rob.
Sorry. Yeah, there was a power outage. We want everyone who is in this program to be seen as equal to anyone who completed a residency in the US, anyone else who is licensed in Massachusetts. So it's very important that everyone has to meet the same criteria, or else the state wouldn't agree to it either. Adoma, does that answer your question?
Okay, I see another question, and Sophia, you can feel free to jump in as well. There's one question from Majine, saying that she's an international medical school graduate. She's a pediatrician in her own country, and she's preparing for the U.S. medical licensing exam. And she wants to know if she passes the steps, can she automatically integrate into the program?
So the program doesn't exist yet. It's got to be passed as a law by the legislature, by the Massachusetts House and Senate. Once that's the case and it exists, automatically, no one can automatically come into the program. Passing USMLE is not enough. You have to be accepted by one of these healthcare facilities who's willing to hire you. So it's kind of like multiple handshakes. If someone's willing to hire you and you've met all the other criteria, they can then say to the state, if the program exists, okay, we're going to hire this person and we'd like them to have this initial license under us. And we're going to provide the mentoring and, help people understand how to practice here. That's the key. Everyone already has the clinical skills. Like Regine, she's already been a pediatrician. But what she hasn't been is a pediatrician in Massachusetts. So she doesn't know how lead testing works here. She doesn't know how, mandated reporting for child at risk reports, things like that. That's what you'll learn during the period when you're in this restricted license. So no, you can't automatically get in, but you would be eligible based on what you're saying, Rishi.
There's also a question, do I need to be a Massachusetts resident? And the answer there is yes.
There's also a question from Fatima asking, how long ago do you need to have the 1-year experience or license from overseas? Some of us have been in the US for a while after having practiced as general physicians overseas.
There is no requirement, there's no look back requirement under this bill. It doesn't matter how long ago it was. Because, and the reason for that is that, first of all, well, I guess the main reason is you will have to pass all those exams, right? And get credentialed, but then you'll also have the benefit of this mentoring program to refamiliarize yourself and to learn about the Massachusetts practice environment.
And we all know that many international trained physicians are at a disadvantage if they apply for residency, because residency programs favor recent graduates. So we're specifically not looking at that at all. We are not trying to say, if you recently completed your training. We're agnostic. We're not concerned about when you completed your training, as long as you meet the requirements.
I see another good question here from Sylvia Chang, who says that the USMLE scores expire after a number of years. Would they need to be current, or would expired scores count? And I note that there's nothing in the legislation about this, but that probably is relevant. You already know the answer, right, Rob? Because it's going to be the same.
Right. So I don't believe you can use expired scores to get a license currently. So on that basis, you wouldn't be able to use them to get a license under this program. I think it's very much like Adoma's question posed at the beginning. How is this different? The major difference is you do not have to do a residency over again in order to get a license through this. Otherwise, the requirements are very similar in terms of, passing the steps, having ECFMG certification, all these things. And I'm just going to take this one from Blaze. No, in terms of passing scores, there's no specific passing score. You just have to have passed.
Someone is raising their hand. Let me see if we can unmute you.
Thank you, thank you.
There you go.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Adiski. I'm just connected with you because I took some a full time to connect it. That's why I left a part of the meeting. So I would like to know what about the cost for that? What are the process? What is the process to register to this program?
So again, program doesn't exist yet until it's enacted into law. But what I can say is, you know, unlike some private things like EC, FMG, all these other things, there's not going to be any specific fee. You will have to go through all the requirements, and if you need to pay for USMLE, then you still need to pay for it. We have not determined, and it would be up to the legislature and the state to determine, would there have to be some kind of fee to apply? I don't know. And I don't control it, but I would say it would be pretty nominal. That's what I would think. This is not going to be some $1,000 fee to try to do this. No, not at all. So I don't expect you would have to put in a lot more money than you already have on some of these tests and other things. But I can't say for sure. Until it exists, we can't tell what those kinds of formalities will be like.
Okay, thank you. In my case, I can say I have only 1 year and a half here in USC. What should be the process for me specifically? Is the same thing, or I have to do some other thing too?
It doesn't matter if you've only been here a year and a half at all. The time in the state or in the U.S. is, I would say, not relevant in a way. It's more like how much did you practice in the country you came from. So time here is not really important, except in terms of you have to be eligible to work legally. That's all.
Okay, thank you. And
Okay.
the last thing.
Before we okay, go ahead.
Yes, the last thing I would like to ask about is what should be the first step to apply in this program?
The
Okay,
first
so
step
the
is to
program-
do all the things you were going to do anyway.
Yeah.
So do the exams, make sure your certifications are up to date from overseas, and be ready to go. That's what I would say.
Okay,
And
thank
I
you
just
very
want
much.
to jump in and say also that in speaking with Emmanuel Owusu, we are, if you get on this list of, to be continued to get updates, etc., I know that Emmanuel would like to convene in the future for more detailed help and guidance around how to prepare for the exams, how to take the exams, etc. Like that information can be handled in more detail, but probably in subsequent meetings. There's some more questions in the chat here. You want to jump in, Sophia?
Yeah, so I can start from where we left off. Muriel, I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name, asks, what position are we contemplating? Physician assistant?
So since all healthcare professionals are licensed by different boards, they're controlled differently, and the laws regarding their licensure are different, we're only going for physicians right now. We can definitely see where this could eventually, we would like to take it to others, dentists and others. The only question I would have about physician assistant is, correct me if I'm wrong, Muriel, but physician assistants don't really exist as a role in most other countries. So I'm not sure how they would be able to, if we ever got to the point of looking at PAs, how would they look at your experience otherwise? If you're talking about someone who was a physician becoming a physician assistant, that's a slightly different issue, which this program wouldn't address.
Great. And then we have a question from Abdi. saying, hi, I am an IMG doc originally from Pakistan and practiced as internal medicine there, now ECFMG certified. Past steps, what is the next step I should take to qualify?
I think you've done everything you need to, besides having all your documents up to date. Speak to your local representative and make sure they support the bill. To be honest, that's the most important next step, given everything you've already done. And
Great.
Abdi, you, from what we see here, you would be exactly the type of person we're trying to get into this program once it exists.
Yeah, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. So I've been actually in the state for a while. I tried to get match. I was not able to match for
Yes. Yes. And that's what, as I said, that's why you are the perfect person for this program. We don't want people to keep hitting their head against the wall, trying to match, submitting hundreds of applications to residencies and spending so much money to get training that you already have. So yes, so please stay in touch with us, Abdi, because as I said, you are exactly the type of person we want to get into the program.
Yeah, I'm also getting involved with, I'm working in the healthcare field right now. So
Good.
That's exactly the other thing I was going to say. Stay involved with healthcare. I don't care if you're a community health worker or if you're an outreach worker, if you're a mental health counselor, whatever you can do, stay involved in healthcare at any level. That's the other important thing.
thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Abdi. So Wethnor, I'm an IMG currently working as a house physician with limited license in New York. How this experience could help me with this pathway. So Wethnor, just help me, when you say a house physician, are you essentially working the same way a resident would? Like you can only work in a hospital? Is that right? If you can unmute yourself, just let us know. But from what I read, I guess the difference is we don't know what your training was after your medical degree. So I can't tell exactly from this, but I think the pathway would be helpful to you, but we need a little more information. And this is where, when this is finally finished, we would have very, very detailed, frequently asked questions, and probably have more sessions like this where people could say, here's my exact case, how do I fit in? So I can't say for sure. Again, New York is very different. We don't tend to have house physicians here, but I think very likely you would, as long as you've got some, training after medical school. So I think Idrissa's
I think
point
I
is
had this
very-
question.
Okay, yeah, please.
Yeah, so there's a great question here. This is from Isidra, who says, is there a chance that an ITP who has taken USMLE steps 1, 2, and 3 and get incorporated, is there potential for them to get incorporated even without residency training in their home countries like it is in Missouri, Arkansas, and Washington State? Now, my understanding, I'm not familiar with Arkansas, but my understanding of the license, the legislation in Missouri, or the law in Missouri, is that Missouri issues a limited license that does not lead to independent licensure at all. So that means that you have to be supervised for the whole of your career. You can never practice independently. So this bill is a lot more ambitious, because the idea is that after you've completed, after you've practiced under the first 2 licenses, you are free to practice wherever you want in Massachusetts. The same is true for Washington State, both Washington and Missouri. I'm not sure about Arkansas again. Washington does also have a residency waiver for exceptional IMGs, right? So people who've proven themselves in the research field, or in other ways have been outstanding, their background is outstanding. It allows, that law allows their licensing board to waive the requirement for residency.
So I'm going to jump on to Jean. if you're a former urologist from your country, will you have to do general medicine, or is there a way to be oriented into your specialty? So while we would love everyone to be able to go into their specialty, and we certainly need urologists, right now the state is prioritizing primary care, so that's pediatrics, family medicine, internal medicine, as well as psychiatry. These are the specialties that we really lack access to. So part of the ability to get this passed, we hope, will be that the state will have access to more people in these areas. So it's important to remember general medicine doesn't exist in the US the same way it does in some other countries. So some places you graduate from medical school, you are a general medical practitioner. We don't do that in the US anymore. You have to have a specialty. So pediatrics is a specialty, internal medicine is a specialty, family medicine is a specialty, urology is a specialty, much longer to train in. So what I would say is, on the face of it, no, you would not be able to come in and practice urology with this. But I think it's important to be able to come in and practice medicine. So again, you wouldn't be a general medical physician because again, we don't have those. So we'd have to think about how there would be a path for someone like you who doesn't have training in internal medicine or pediatrics. So we're not sure yet. That's what I can say honestly. Yes, Farida, I think we answered your question about USMLE. Okay, so let's talk about Rebecca's question. Could you speak more to the underserved areas? Are these already designated, or if not, how will they be? They are designated by a division of the state every year. So it is not up to any one individual, but the state has a body that comes together and does research and looks at how many physicians are practicing in an area, let's say by county especially, and how long is the wait time for someone to get a primary care appointment, things like that. So that's what they look like, and they can track it very easily. You know, there's, I don't know, 7 times as many physicians in Suffolk County and Boston as there are in most of the other counties in the state. So for instance, you know, in general, Boston has more, but there are areas of Boston that are also underserved and could benefit from this. So it's mostly about the density of practicing physicians who are taking new patients. That's how they look at it. So for Mohsen, no, sorry, we can't really address classes for USMLE in this venue, but some of the folks on this list, if you're part of, we have a statewide support network. Many of the folks on here will be part of it. And this is a perfect kind of question you can bring to your colleagues. So you can ask other people in the state, how do I prepare for USMLE? So we can't answer questions like that. Let's see here.
Rob, it
Yes.
looks like someone in the call also has had their hand raised for a while now.
Oh, yeah. I'm gonna let you, as the tech expert, call on them.
Yeah, Fideline, if that's how you pronounce your name, I'm just gonna ask you to unmute and see if that works. No, you're still muted, sorry.
Did
There-
you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I just connect late, but I'm so confused. My question is, we should pass the board certificate in the US to be qualified for this program?
When you say the board certificate, what do you mean?
The USMLE.
Okay, that's not a board certification, just so you know. So USMLE is not a board certification, it's a licensing exam. And I know the
Okay.
terms are very confusing, but yes, you have to pass USMLE to be eligible for this.
Okay. The 3
Yes.
steps.
The 3 steps, yes.
Well, for the
Okay.
first, for
Thank you.
participation under the limited license to start, if the bill, remember that this program does, if you joined late, this program doesn't exist yet, right? And we have to pass the legislation first. And then you would have to have a relationship with a participating facility that's willing to hire you, right?
Okay.
But yeah, so for that, you would need to have, your ECFMG certificate, and you would have had to have passed both step 1 and step 2 CK.
Okay, thank you.
And the key is similar to residency. If you were doing it here, you do step 3 once you're in. So you just need step 1 and 2 to qualify for this, but then you need to finish step 3 before you're done and eligible for a full license.
Okay.
Also before you're eligible for the restricted license.
Right.
Actually,
Right.
yeah.
Can I add to this conversation? So for those of you who are wondering about how is the process going to work, again, first thing, the bill has to pass. This is info session, but from experience of other states that have passed similar bill, there will always be some organization that will serve to facilitate or be a clearinghouse to help you answer questions. So we probably will not leave you on your own looking for healthcare center to employ you. There will be a process involved that will streamline things for you. So for now, the focus is you knowing about this bill and then supporting it. Anytime we send out update, you will need some of you to write written testimony. I would say all of you writing written testimony. We need some of you to come with us to State House and push for the bill to pass first, and then we'll work through the rest of the details. Thank you.
I want to jump to a few more I see here. I mean, I'll just say for anyone asking about USMLE, yes, you must participate in USMLE to be eligible for this. I wanted to point to, Idrissa has another question. This is not an assistant physician program. That's very different. What they do in Missouri, as Amy said, never gets you to a full independent license. So it's very different. So I would not compare it. This actually is more robust and means that you can be independent in the end. So you can certainly do what they do in Missouri, and it's a great idea, but you'll never be on your own. You're always going to be supervised for as long as you practice. Let's see what else here. And I'll just say to Burmeed, as we just said, if you haven't passed the USMLE, you can't consider getting into this program. It's a requirement. This is an important one from Mitchie. I'm a general practitioner without having a specialty. Could I participate in the program? Yes, I would say yes, definitely. We have to look at the training you receive, the qualifications, but as I said, in other countries, general practitioners still exist. So we hope to find a way to have those people participate here. But I can't tell you exactly how it would look like.
There's another interesting question from Blaze Tacoy. Are there specific visa categories that are recommended or commonly used for foreign trained medical professionals? So I want to point out that this bill is really aimed at folks who are here, who are already here. It's not designed to attract physicians to come from other states, because oftentimes those folks, they come on a J1 visa obtained with the blessing of their country of residence, literally a statement of need from their Ministry of Health. They come here often to study, and they graduate from US medical schools, right? But this bill is for all of the physicians, experienced physicians who have been practicing at home and now they're here. They're not here to study. They didn't necessarily come on a visa. Other than that, I think the only requirement is that you have permission to be in the country. Would you agree with that, Rob?
Yes. Yeah. So this legislation has no comment on immigration status. It's
That's right.
completely separate, and it's important that it is. So your immigration status is separate. As long as you're eligible to work, you're eligible to participate in that. That's what I would say. Sophia, did you see who had their hand up first? Because I was not paying attention.
Yes, I believe Pierre had his hand up.
Okay. Pierre, do you want to go ahead and unmute?
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for this forum. I really like it. It helps a lot. So I have a question. I've heard you said general physician is no longer exist in US. So if I graduate outside of the US, like general physician, so it means this program is not for me?
No, I'm not saying that. It just, the categories don't match up. So if you've been in practice already, then we could probably, I'm not sure exactly, we'd say you're equivalent to, let's say, maybe family medicine. So I'm not sure exactly how it would work. So what I'm saying is there is no category to work in general physician or general medicine in the US, but if you've already been working as a general physician in another country, we would definitely like to see you be able to participate in this. Again, I can't tell you the details of how that would happen, but I can tell you my desire is that you would definitely be able to do it. It's just, you can't say, I was a general physician in Haiti or Burma. Can I be a general physician here? It pretty much doesn't exist. So we have to figure that part out. But it's a very good point. But my goal and all of our goals should be yes, say yes to general physician.
Okay, thank you. And do you know what are the steps like to take for the test USMLE?
I'm not going to go into too many details about that because, again, I want you to utilize this group and this network to answer questions for you about USMLE. This is specifically about the legislation.
Okay, got it.
And for those of you who joined late, we're discussing the Physician Pathway Act introduced in Massachusetts in January before the state legislature for their consideration. And the bill, don't think that this program exists because the legislation hasn't been passed yet. What we're talking about here is how folks could benefit from it if it's passed, right? Jerniello, Jean.
Hi everyone. I would like first thanking you for this great initiative. I just wanna have a full question. Here in Massachusetts, there's like a bunch of specialists. For example, let's say someone have done OB/GYN specialty in business practicing for over 10 years in like overseas, and the target specialty on your future program, it's like pediatrics, psychiatry, internal medicine, and family medicine. So let's assume this OB/GYN or orthopedic or other specialty not listed on your program meet this requirement. So do you have like a path to redirect them to family medicine or to one of the other specialties that mostly it will be family medicine. That's the path that will be easier for someone who has been OB/GYN or orthopedic or surgeon. Is that something like that in mind, or?
So the thing is, it's an excellent question. And I've certainly had friends who were orthopedists someplace else and came here and eventually practiced family medicine. That would require a residency because we don't consider, we don't say orthopedics is the highest specialty. And if you did that, you can automatically do family medicine. Everything is considered a specialty. So family medicine is a specialty, orthopedics is a specialty. If you're trained in orthopedics, the only path to family medicine, I believe, would be a residency. That's the hard part. So especially if you're a surgical specialist, you would be hard to just become a medical specialist by default. Yeah. And again, the reason it's not that we want to exclude colleagues who specialize. Certainly we could use it. But what the state is looking for specifically and why they would be interested in passing this legislation is primary care and psychiatry are at a critical level here. We have a lot of specialists in the state. So you have to remember the legislation, again, it's like a handshake. We want to get internationally trained physicians who are here to be able to work. The state wants patients and residents who live here to be able to get care. And right now, the care they need the most is primary care and psychiatry.
Yeah, I understand, but if they need those specialists, let's assume that someone made those requirements. Why don't they just redirect them to a specific program in the list, like the psychiatry, family medicine, or pediatrics?
Well, what do you mean? What do you mean by redirect them?
Let's say that this person passed the step 1, step 2, and step 3, and are willing to enter a residency program, but you already know how it's difficult to enter like in the like normal way. Would it like be a certain way to waive some rules so you can get into the specialty?
Well, remember, residency programs are all independent. The state doesn't govern them at all. So that's part of the reason for this is we have no control over residency programs. So I think that might be a step to look to in the future, but the first step is to get the state to acknowledge that internationally trained physicians can be licensed here if they've got clinical experience. So I very much appreciate what you're saying, but I think it's probably a second, third, or fourth step beyond this.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. The so Joe says, where can I read more information about this act? Amy, where can they read more information about this act?
Well, I did throw something in the chat here, but you know, there has been some press about it, but that's not the best source of information because they're speaking very generally. I just wanted to say that everyone on this, everyone who registered and participated today is going to get a copy of the slideshow that we had in the beginning. So you all have the information. There's contact information. You can write and ask questions. And other than that, there isn't like a summary somewhere of the legislation. You could actually look at the legislation itself. That's actually an interesting idea. And in fact, why don't I put the link to one of the bills? So there's a House bill and a Senate bill. That's how we do things. They both, you know, the legislature can do either one. They're identical, doesn't matter. But I'll drop a link in the chat for if you want to take a look at the actual legislation. Would that be interesting for anyone?
Also, people could always go to the Mira page for updates.
That's right. Yeah.
Right.
And we are going to have, we are going to be putting together a newsletter for folks to keep them updated as well, just on developments with the bill. So that's another thing.
I'd say the easiest place to watch is the Mira homepage on this, and you'll see updates. I just wanted to speak to Maria Oliveira's question. Is it necessary to apply for the program to have at least 1 year of work in the country of origin? Yes, this is for experienced physicians. This is not for people who have only graduated medical school and never practiced, because that's a different category. So we're looking for people, we're looking at the category of folks who have graduated from medical school and practiced and had advanced training to be able to say they don't need to do a residency here in Massachusetts or the US because they've done the equivalent. If you've only finished medical school and not had any clinical experience, not any practice experience, this program, you would not be eligible for this program. In that case, and I know it's not that helpful, you're someone who wants to apply to a residency here. Yes, if possible. Let's see. Any other hands? Sophia, I don't see any other hands.
No, I think we covered all of questions.
Right. So I also just want to say, I know it's frustrating because we would love for one piece of legislation to magically resolve all the issues that we've talked about. It's very difficult. I mean, this piece of legislation, I would say, has its origins, what, 13, 14 years ago, Amy, something like that?
I think Jeff wrote the first report in like 2014.
2014, yeah.
And then the specific legislation came out of the commission. We had to get the commission formed, and that took legislation as well. So that effort started probably in like 2017.
So I don't want people to be disconsolate that, oh, this is a slow process, it's not for me. We have made progress over the past 2 years that hadn't been seen in a long time. And if this passes, this will be the most advanced, we think, legislation in the US, really letting internationally trained physicians into the group, you know, the group of being able to practice in the country. So how long can you say this is going to pass? I think what you mean is, how long will it take? We'll know by next July if it passes. I think that we can say for sure. So we're looking at something less than a year. Yeah. So
it could be, Rob, it could be a year next year, or it could be the following year, because the cycle is 2-year cycle, right?
The soonest would be within this cycle, which is ending by next July. The longest is never, unfortunately. So it could maybe not pass this cycle. We try to put it up again and it might get support. We don't know. Until it passes, we can't say when it will happen. But the only way it will happen is if all of you who live in Massachusetts contact your elected representatives. And some of you say, I'm not a citizen, I don't vote. That has nothing to do with it. Nothing to do with it. No state representative or senator in Massachusetts cares about that, because you're still their constituents. You live in the state, you live in their district, you have needs, and we can tell you definitely that that's the case. Some people might be nervous about approaching people. You don't need to be. So we need all of you to be a part of this effort. That's really a key part of it.
I'd like to add something really important here. The reason that this bill exists is because one physician from Iran walked into her state senator's office, and, you know, she'd already passed, you know, all of her licensing exams, and then she tried to get a residency and couldn't, right? And she tried, she sent out hundreds of applications, and then she walked into her senator's office and explained to him what was going on. And because of that, her senator took this on. He's the one who sponsored the legislation that got the commission set up. The reason we needed a commission was to bring all the experts together. We included like all the heavy hitters in the medical field, Mass Medical Society, Mass League of Community Health Centers, all the boards of registration in medicine, dentistry, etc. All of them were on the commission because of the legislation that was filed. And that was a collaboration between MIRA, my organization, and Senator Jason Lewis. He's the one who started it all. And really, he will say that she's the one who started it all. It was one conversation with one legislator. And I would also say that, you know, legislators would rather hear from all of you than they would hear from all of us advocates. They don't care, you know, advocates, whatever, they know we're going to advocate for stuff. For all they know, it's just because our organization wants it or whatever. The best way to convince a legislator is to tell him your story, him or her, your story, because everyone right now is aware of the terrific need we have for physicians. There's just, you know, we learned, there was a recent study from the American Medical Association in Massachusetts, the Massachusetts delegation, that found that 25% of our state's physicians plan to retire in the next 2 years. Who's going to replace them? So everyone is thinking about this. So, you know, you have an incredible, you have a stronger voice in some ways than we do. And that's why it's really important for you. And we'll be sending, you know, again, if you, there was an opportunity to say that you wanted to be kept updated. If you indicate to us that you want to be kept updated, we will share, we're going to put together a newsletter. We'll share information where you can find out who your state legislator is and write them specifically and alert them to this bill.
And ask them, just ask them outright, what's your position on this bill? And if they don't have one, tell them they better have one.
Well, well, the best way is to actually go in and one way is to write to them, and then many of them may already support it and they'll be like, yes, I support this, but it's good for them to hear from you. Another way is to just go visit them in their legislative office. Again, they would rather sit down with any of you than they would sit down with any of us.
Well, with that said, I'm looking at time here.
Yeah.
It's 6:33. So first of all, I want to say to our participants, this bill is for you. We have you in mind. And it has to pass first. So that is something a little bit beyond our control. But there are things that are within your control, right? Supporting the bill is within your control. It's something you can do. Staying informed about this bill is something you can do. And if I were in your shoes, the question I'm asking is, how do I begin to get myself ready in case this bill passes and I can take advantage of? All that kind of questions, we will start providing answers through a follow-up email that will come after this presentation, maybe tomorrow or Wednesday, you will receive it. Stay engaged, and then we will take it out from there. So with that said, I want to say thank you to Rob and Amy and Sophia for sharing their knowledge and experience with us and for championing this bill on our behalf. Again, Emmanuel Owusu, Executive Director of African Bridge Network. If you have any other questions, we will take it offline. Enjoy the rest of the evening, everyone. Bye for now.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, Fifi.